Good afternoon and welcome to the Chamber's Connect with Careers, sponsored by Capcom Federal Credit Union and Hoosick Valley Contractors. I'm Kate Manley, president of the Rensselaer County Regional Chamber of Commerce and your host for Connect with Careers. Today, we're joined by Heidi Knoblauch, who is the Venture and Growth Relationship Manager at Pioneer Bank and also the owner of Plumb Oyster Bar. Welcome, Heidi.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. So really, you're an entrepreneur, but you also have two roles. You work at Pioneer Bank and you also are the owner of Plumb Oyster Bar. So tell me what exactly you do in both of those roles.
Sure. So my day looks very different every day. I will tell you that right now. So in my role at the bank, it sounds like a really fancy job, but really I just help businesses start and grow their business. So I do that through a variety of different innovative ways. So finding out how to fund businesses that are either starting up or growing is what I do at the bank. And then at Plumb Oyster Bar is a restaurant. It serves pretty typical American food, has a big raw bar and big cocktail bar. And so I started that in 2016. And absolutely, that kind of gets out that creative, entrepreneurial energy for sure. And yeah.
So how did you get to these roles? Like, what is your pathway like? Tell us a little bit about you, Heidi.
Yeah, I think like everyone, everybody has a unique path, right? And so mine just happens to sound really odd. So, and it sounds odd because my career started in academia. So I wanted to be a historian. And I started that path at Yale, and I got a PhD at Yale for history of science and medicine, actually. And I knew early on that I didn't want to do a tenure track position, that wasn't going to be for me. What I liked about academia is the same stuff that I liked about entrepreneurship. So I like kind of finding out new things, figuring out what problems there are and fixing them. And so, and you do that a lot in academia, actually. So it trained me really, really well for that. So despite not really wanting to teach or be in academia, I got a job in academia. So that brought me a little farther upstate. And I taught at a university for a year and just kind of didn't want to do that anymore. And when I came back to Troy, I had actually applied for a bunch of jobs. Like I had applied for different jobs and tried to figure out what I was going to do. And people wouldn't give me two looks, they wouldn't hire me. It's actually kind of interesting to, I've talked to a couple people about that recently who didn't want to look at my resume when I applied to them as a PhD, because they were like, who's this PhD from Yale? What does she want to do?
Why does she want to do business? Yeah.
And so I kind of felt like I couldn't really get a foothold. And there was this awesome retail space right in the heart of downtown Troy. And I kind of had this vision for a restaurant there. And didn't have any restaurant experience or anything, but knew that I wanted to make a business and I wanted that business to have a physical space. I know it sounds really lame, but I just knew that I wanted it to connect people and wanted it to be just a physical space, and having it be downtown was super important to me. So I started Plumb, and I promise I'm almost done with this story, everyone. It's a very long story. And so then I, through Plumb Oyster Bar, got involved in economic development, because part of what I was doing with the downtown was doing workforce development and economic development stuff. So got involved in economic development, and through that wanted to start a seed fund for entrepreneurs who were starting companies to start and grow their businesses. And Pioneer Bank was one of the people who was really interested in that idea. And they kind of brought me in-house and said we should do that at the bank, not as kind of this separate entity. So that's how that happened.
I think you started this off by saying that's not like a normal path or a linear path, but I think that's so normal. And that's what students and all of us really realize. I think when you look back and say, like, I didn't think I was going to be a president of a chamber, but things happen and it's okay to deviate from your one plan. And I think that makes it really reassuring for all of our students that we have here. So talk about some of the skills you use in both jobs that might be important for students to realize how critical they are in the work world.
I think the best skill that someone can hone early on is how to write. So learning how to write is critical. It is essential because writing is how you are persuasive. It's how you get your point across. It's how you communicate. And so learning how to write, I cannot overemphasize that skill. And so people who can learn that early, whether it's learning how to write fiction and being creative, or learning how to write research papers or case analyses, all of those things are vital for a person's development, I think.
That's great. Absolutely. And just communication, as we've seen in this day and age, is so critical. So what's your favorite part of your job, either job or both combined?
What's my favorite part? I really, really like figuring out hard problems. So I really, really like figuring out, I like figuring out what is a problem to solve. So the kind of the step before, how do you solve this problem? I like figuring out and identifying, this is the problem and these are the bounds around the problem, and this is kind of how we can reimagine that thing. So then I do that all the time at both roles, right? Both jobs all the time. So, right now during COVID-19, there's a lot of pivoting happening. And there's a lot of pivoting happening for everyone. In restaurants specifically, it's almost like we have three businesses inside a single business, because we have to figure out to-go orders, we have to figure out dine-in orders, we have to figure out just like how to reinvent ourselves right now. And so doing that, if you don't like solving problems, you probably won't like figuring that stuff out. You know what I mean? Similarly with companies, companies who are looking for, let's say, a PPP loan or something like that. If you don't like figuring out complex problems, you'd be miserable. But for me, I like that. So I'm not miserable.
You talked about the creativity portion. So I think in both of those, that's problem solving and creativity go hand in hand, because it's, you're coming up with a creative solution on how to figure out to-go orders and all of that. So That's terrific. That's terrific. Talk about the importance. We've talked about a lot with the importance of transferable skills and what that means and what the future of work, how to transfer some of those skills. What would you have to say in regards to transferable skills overall?
I think so, to kind of paraphrase Charles Darwin a little bit. So species that are able to adapt are evolutionarily strong. So it's not actually the strongest that survive. So that's often misquoted. This is my historian of science coming out. That's often like a misquoted aspect of Darwin and evolution. It's not the strongest that survive. It's the most adaptable that survive. So in transferable skills, I think a lot of it is about being open to have your skills be transferable. So just the mere fact of just being open to the idea that, your skills that you learned at Yale writing your dissertation might apply to when you're in the kitchen figuring out like a problem with your oven, just having the openness for that. And I think this is not the question that you asked necessarily, but I think that sometimes there's a lot of judgment in kids and saying like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And back to kind of what you said before, when I was in high school, I didn't know that public health was a thing. Like I thought I knew doctors were a thing. I knew nurses were a thing. I didn't know that like epidemiology was a thing or that public health was a thing. And the same thing with, the kitchen. So I think that people who are able to instantly figure out a problem and have reactionary skills are some of the most amazing people I've ever met. Like that is such a good skill. And so if you are able to be in a crowded kitchen where it is hot and you are able to keep track of 20 different tables orders and you're able to make that food quickly and efficiently and have it taste good and keep all of that straight in your head, it's an amazing skill. That's an incredible skill to have. And so it's not even just that skills are transferable, but like your attitude is transferable. So right. You can transfer your attitude. So you can say, I'm going to approach this problem as this problem is like a gift. This problem is a gift for me to try and figure out. It's not adversity. It's not overcoming adversity. It's the adversity in and of itself is like a great gift to have.
Exactly. Because it's like, if I can do this, if I can figure this out in the kitchen, I can take this under stress and operate in various situations in various industries. It's huge. And attitude goes a long way in the workforce as well too.
And just being open. So just saying like, there will be times in life where things come across your path. And just being open to kind of seeing where things go, I think is also really important.
Definitely. You talk a lot, obviously you help businesses start up, and then you've talked a lot about your business. If a student was looking to start a business, what advice would you give them?
Oh man, I have so much advice to give them. I would say that one of the biggest things that people don't realize is that businesses are successful not because of their revenue. They're successful because they keep their expenses under control. So if you have too many expenses, it doesn't matter how much money you make. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter at all how much money you make. And that is something that I think is if someone had told me that early on, I would have said, like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. Like, you need to make money, right? Like, that's mm-hmm. But it's actually a lot about controlling your expenses. So that kind of leads you to talking about working on your business rather than in your business. So you might hear that a lot from people, that you need to work on your business, not in your business. And why that is because if you're working in your business, you don't have a bird's eye view where you can kind of figure things out and control your expenses and control what's going on in your business. So that would be like my biggest piece of advice.
Those are two great tips. Yeah. So one of our students sent in a question, and we're asking this of each of our presenters, is how would you define success, and what does success look like for you?
Success can never be achieved. So success has to be something that, in my view, is just constantly maintained. So like anything that has to be constantly maintained, your success has to be a combination of factors that make you feel successful, mm-hmm. right? So I don't think I have like a great definition of success, because for me, it's not something that is like static.
Right. It's not an end destination. It's a constant journey.
It's a dynamic. Mm-hmm. There are days where that feel very unsuccessful, right? But I don't think that at any point I can say whether or not, success isn't like, well, 50% of the days I'm successful, and like, so therefore I'm 51% of the days I'm successful, therefore I'm successful. It's much more kind of a balancing act. So mm-hmm. being careful with your health and wellness, being careful with the interactions that you have on people, the impact that you have on your community, on the environment, all of those things are super important. So if you were to ask me, like, how do you find success from, let's say, an accounting perspective, right? For me, you can't just look at like what a business does accounting wise in profitability.
Right.
You have to look at what its impact is more holistically. So for a business to be successful, it needs to do a lot of different things. And for a human being to be successful, similarly, it has to do a lot of different things and have it's self-supported up.
And how it is defined is very different at different points in time. So, you know, a pre-COVID success might look very different than a COVID success.
Yeah.
Which is the same for a person. If you're early in your career, it's considered a success versus later, what's important to you, and kind of goes back to values as well.
And also I think how people can feel successful is to feel gratitude. So that is success and gratitude, I think, go really hand in hand. So I can feel grateful every day. I can feel again, kind of thankful that I get the opportunity to do certain things. And when that gratitude is there, I think kind of success, that the other side of the gratitude coin is success in a lot of ways.
Yep, absolutely. And to wrap up our last question, what last piece of advice would you give to high school students?
Whew. Man, I think, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of what I've already said about just feeling grateful for the opportunities that you're given in life. And so when something is really, really hard, you know, it's really, really hard for a reason. And that reason might be because it's preparing you for something else, or because it's challenging you in a different way, or whatever. So I would say that practicing gratitude early on is really important. Also, like, don't care about your SAT score or like anything like that, because you won't remember what it is and it doesn't matter. And so sorry for all the parents watching that, but it's just definitely things like the SATs and in a large respect, grades do not matter. So when I was in high school, I had an advisor, and I asked her, I said, I want you to, in my high school, there was a grade and then a large comment next to it that the teacher wrote, almost like a check-in, how you doing? Like a performance review kind of thing. And so I asked my advisor, I said, can you just white out all the grades? I said, because I don't care about that part. Like, that part I don't care about. And so could you just white them all out before you give it to me, so that I can read the evaluation of myself? And so and that's because that's what makes you better.
The feedback. Yep.
The feedback. A grade does not make you better at all. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm competitive. I like to see the grade, right? But like, that part doesn't matter. And if that becomes your only objective, you'll lose sight of a lot of like the good stuff that's around.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Heidi, for joining us today. And we know that I'm sure students will have more questions, and we'll follow up with you individually, but thank you for spending time with us today.
Thanks so much.